Welcome back, and thank you for joining me on Mr. Jim's Adventures. Last time, Sebastian entered the Phoenix Academy, met fellow recruit Zhang Min Zi, and took his oath to serve internal security. While Sebastian focused on his future, powerful figures behind the scenes revealed plans that could change the future of the entire fleet. Today, Sebastian begins his specialized training under Lieutenant Law. What starts as a simple classroom assignment quickly turns into something far more significant, drawing the attention of some of the most influential people in the fleet. Meanwhile, Captain Padrick makes one more attempt to rid herself of the young man who has become a constant thorn in her side. This is Chapter 9 of The Problem with Aether. Law. Ten Hut! One of the students bellows as the officers enters the room and they bolt to attention. The instructor is a man in his early 20s. The dark gray internal security uniform stretches nicely across his well-muscled frame. The silver bar on his collar proclaims he is a first lieutenant. At ease. Everyone, take your seats. I am Lieutenant Law. He strides to the front of the class. I must apologize. I should have been one of the first people you met. I'm here to test the skills you demonstrated before coming to the academy. From my report, we will create your individualized training programs. Fortunately, other duties have kept me away, and all the suitable replacements already had classes they were working with. Due to these circumstances, you all have been working for the last week with Lieutenant Danielson, whose history of internal security is a class everybody must pass, so no time is lost. However, now that I have returned, I will have to interrupt. The lieutenant changes his voice and does a fair imitation of Danielson's dry monotone, his so intriguing anecdotes that explain why IS does things the way it does. Returning to his normal voice, but my interruption is not a permanent one, so please keep track of your notes on the material. Oh, and a word of advice, ask questions. His tone changes, and the course is much more bearable if he believes you are actually interested. Even before you chose to join the academy, IS had their eyes on all of you. Don't be alarmed. We watch everyone who shows any sign of excellence in the sciences. We need skilled people working with Fleet Command. I have here. He opens a drawer in the large wooden desk at the front of the room and pulls out a stack of folders. The projects you performed that made us decide to recruit you. Per the instructions Danielson drilled into them, one of the students stands to attention at his desk. Cadet Kumalo, you have a question? Well, yes, sir. I'm a bit confused. I wasn't recruited. I made up my mind to join internal security when I was a young boy. Ah, I see. Last summer, before school started, your father became very ill, correct? Kumulo nods. At that time, it was being suggested that you should stay home to take over the role of head of the house. You were reminded by several family members that it is your duty as the elder son. Furthermore, as a good son, you were determined to alter the course of the rest of your life in order to take care of others. You gave up your childhood dreams so you could take on this family responsibility. Then a cousin of yours, Missy, reminded everyone at the midsummer feast that those of us who came to space are sworn to treat everyone as equals, based solely on personal merit. Race, color, national origin, religion, and gender are no longer acceptable barriers to position, responsibility, and duty. A very internal security-ish sentiment, if you ask me. This emboldened your older sister to step forward and claim the responsibility of caring for the family as she is the eldest child. This was accepted by the family, giving you the chance to apply to the academy. Well, it so happens that your cousin, Mizzy, is the assistant to Captain Dwayne Roth of Internal Security. We are everywhere, or at least try to be, and we observe and record, particularly when the senior class has so many promising students. My job is to double check the information in your portfolios. If all goes well, I will not be here for more than a week or two. He turns to study his students. From a military perspective, this is a sorry lot. Only two are in good physical condition, and the rest are barely passable. Fortunately, when not in the classroom, these guys will be spending most of their lives for the next few months doing PT and martial training. In your application to the academy, you or your school listed a project that you did that IS either saw potential in or already knows it needs people with those abilities. As he speaks, he uses his insight to take a closer look at them. This view is much more promising. Your first assignment as part of my class will be to reproduce that project. We'll concentrate on the models you used in the class. So, for example, Cadet G, you will build your project small enough to put on this table, not the scale you placed in a ship environment. He passes sheets out to everyone without having to ask their names. Each of these sheets gives details on the project you are to work on. Study these sheets carefully because we have made small modifications to make your project better fit the needs of internal security. You will have about 45 minutes remaining in this class before joining the rest of the cadets for the evening meal. Use this time to start planning your projects. Each day, you are to spend this class time working on that project. You are to be either building it, getting supplies, drawing schematics, or whatever it takes to get the job done. Sebastian looks at the sheet he is given. As he feared, it was the school project he had briefly mentioned to Min. There are no IS prescribed adjustments on his sheet. Well, the secret is out. There's no use delaying the inevitable. The life of a regular Marine can't be too much worse than that of an IS officer. Sebastian snaps to attention beside his desk. Cadet Snow? It took all of Law's training not to burst into a grin. The betting pool in the officers' mess was favoring the kid would stall and try to go last. Lieutenant, I don't need to gather supplies. Everything I need is here, and it would take me only a few minutes to demonstrate. So I might as well go first and get this over with. Then I can help the others lift and tote. Proceed. Sebastian takes his watch off as he heads over to one of the tables at the far side of the room. Most of you do not know what my experiment is about, so as I gather the few things I need, I will explain. He places the watch on the table. My project is simply to produce freestanding aether that is unaffected by its surroundings, but is still useful. He climbs up on a desk and removes one of the ballasts from the overhead lights. As you know, aether is very unstable and needs to be contained in a vacuum or in a magnetic field, also referred to as a magnetic bottle. Min, may I have use of one of your hairpins? She removes it and hands it to him. I will, of course, get you another one, for one is going to go through some changes. As he takes apart the ballast, he continues his explanation. What I need to do is build a device that will hold the aether, which is what I'm doing with the watch battery and the wires from the ballast. They will be used to create a magnetic field. And the hairpin, he bends it a couple of times and loops it through the coiled ballast wires, will become the off switch. He stands behind the table with his box and wires arranged in front of him. The faint hum you hear is this crude contraption generating a magnetic field. Because I tend to travel a lot, or at least I did before I joined the academy, I always have a glyph on me. It has two runes, one for travel and one for luck, sort of a good luck charm for travelers. He removes a small piece of shaped silver from his pocket. This is, I must say, the only part of my project that is truly original. The rest I copied from text brought from Earth. Aether is a very hard thing to control and gather, which is, when you think about it, odd. Aether is the stuff between the stars, but it is also the stuff between atoms. Every moment of our lives, we are literally surrounded by the best energy source ever discovered. The magnetic fields of the atoms keep the minute amounts of aether at bay. It is only in larger amounts that it becomes dangerous. As I have babbled here, I have given time for the magnetic bottle to form and to make a small vacuum as it did so. Everybody get ready to yawn. For some reason, the next part tends to change air pressure, and yawning will help alleviate any discomfort. Sebastian switches on his insight. Lieutenant Law notices how swiftly he makes the transition. Reconfiguring the travel glyph, I will use it to move the aether from the atmosphere of the class into the magnetic bottle. Give me a moment as I concentrate. Slowly, a green light begins to fill the spot above the control box. Within seconds, a hazy swirl of green fills it, a smoky looking substance that is there yet not there. That should be enough. Real live aether gathered and collected on this table. Come forward and take a look. I know most of us never really see the stuff. Law and the cadets come forward with appropriate oohs and ahs. Now for the risky part. I will remove the magnetic bubble. The shock on their faces makes Sebastian chuckle. From early childhood, every child in the fleet had been taught how dangerous aether is. The amount gathered on the table, if exposed to matter like the air in the room, would create an explosion large enough to vaporize the ship. But first, let me do one more thing. Aether is naturally magnetized. It is how we get it to flow to the power plant. I will use the travel glyph one more time to move the charge from the bottle directly to the Aether, but I will do it at the atomic level, thus neutralizing the Aether. In this state, it no longer attracts other matter. In fact, it would take a tremendous force to make it contact other matter. It will contain itself. Sebastian concentrates through the glyph for much longer than he had previously. Then, as the cadets watch, he uses the bent hairpin to disengage the magnetic bottle and reaches out to scoop up the green substance. Holding it in his hands, he reaches out towards Min. It's very light. Blow on it and watch it move. She does as asked and is delighted as it floats away from her. For the next few minutes, the class plays with it, poking it, blowing on it, and watching it flow from one of Sabo's hands to the other. Then Cadet Cumulo asks, "This sure looks cool, but is it really Aether?" Good question. We use Aether combined with matter to generate power. It's how we operate every device in the fleet. When I started this, I advised I would make freestanding Aether that is still usable. Please observe my watch. As you will recall, I removed the battery to create the magnetic bubble. As you can see, it is still running, though it did lose a few minutes while the battery was removed, until I was able to gather the Aether and link the two together. Law adds, "Yes, it is. My own school project involved Aether, and I've studied it for a long time. Using insight, Aether has a very unique look, and this is exactly what Sebo claims it is." Law calculated his winnings. As he was the only one to bet the kid could do it again, he was going to be able to afford a vacation. The class seemed pleased, and Sebo enjoyed their reaction. But he wondered at Laws. The lieutenant should be angry. He should be getting ready to tell Sebo this wasn't good enough for the academy. Instead, he seemed intrigued and quite happy about something. Well, class, I think this is enough for one day. But before I dismiss you, I want to point a couple of things out. One, while the phenomena has been written about thousands of times, only one other person in recorded history has ever managed to extract freestanding Aether from the environment. Two, as Mr. Snow has dramatically displayed his completed project and graciously volunteered, he is now available to assist you. But remember, he is the heavy labor, lift and tote, as he put it. He is not to assist with design or any elements that would be graded on. Sardinad. Captain Voss? Captain Padrick? The general nods to both. General Blankenship, it is a pleasure to finally meet you. She shakes hands with the general and then reaches her hand out to the other officer. You must be Major Sardinad. Captain Voss has told me the work you have done to help with the food distribution problems. Captain Padrick, Sardinad returns the handshake. I do believe this meeting was your idea. I hate to rush through this, but General Blankenship has a busy schedule. So how can the military and IS assist you? Well, I hate to speak ill of anyone, and I really don't know where to start, Padrick demurs. Come, Padrick, Voss interjects. You spoke ill enough about this young man on my ship. Out with it. She scowls at her superior briefly, but the expression is gone by the time she turns back to the military men. Well, she sighs, it has come to my attention that a rather foul young man has recently been accepted into the internal security training. I believe you call it the Phoenix Academy? She pauses, in hopes of a comment, but when the three gentlemen remain silent, she continues, "Well, this young man has been wreaking havoc on board my vessel, and I don't know what kind of lies he's told to get accepted, but I fear my trust in the security of the fleet would wither if I knew that that was the sort guarding it." She frowns as a junior officer enters without so much as a knock and comes to stand behind Blankenship. Sardinand looks at the newcomer and watches as a sheet of paper is passed to the general. "Go ahead, miss. This is just an aid to the general. He'll be leaving shortly." Even as the Sardinand says this, the general glances at the paper and nods. Lieutenant Law salutes and leaves the room. Well, as I was saying, this ruffian frequently steals aboard my vessel despite my efforts to keep him away. The last time he broke into one of our pump stations and damaged our water purification system. Furthermore, he is an utter cad, and I fear for the chastity of one of my passengers. The general passes the note to Sardinad as he asks, "Now that you have brought this to our attention, we will have to investigate. We go by the books around here. I do fear this means we will have to have a few extra IS men aboard your ship as we proceed. But if what you say is true, we can't have someone like that in the service. What is the name of this cadet?" "His name is Sebastian Snow. There's something even worse you should know. His cousin is the villain Quentin Sloane. That whole family is blasted and should never have been allowed in the fleet. Captain, I was under the impression we judged people by their actions, not their relatives. However, it's funny you should mention him. The message my aide just delivered is about that young man. From what it says here, I cannot believe villain is a strong enough word. Padrick can't believe her luck. She had thought she would need to show all her evidence and spend hours persuading them. She barely contained her smile, and her blue eyes glint with satisfaction. As for most of your accusations, we were already well aware. It seems this young man has a healthy infatuation for your niece, which is why he makes frequent trips to your vessel. While it is within your right to restrict access to your ship, I learned a long time ago that young love will rarely be obstructed by rules. When we heard about the water purification incident, we thoroughly investigated. It is true that the trip through the pump risked damaging the system, but he followed a very carefully laid out plan to avoid any harm. Your own people diving after him in oily work clothes did more damage than the boy. Patrick's face starts losing color as the general speaks and becomes quite ashen. I thought you said he was a villain, worse than a villain. Oh, I meant that in jest. I thought you did too. Blankenship's right eyebrow raises in a question. This young man just demonstrated an ability that could likely change life as we know it in the fleet. An ability which seems to run in the family since the only other one who has ever been able to pull it off is that cousin of his you mentioned. And the boy has done it twice now, which suggests he can do it whenever he wants. The general turns to Captain Voss. My good captain, I know how you deal with your fellow captains is completely at your discretion. However, if this young lady comes to me with wild stories and attempts to harm my people again, it will become a matter for the council, particularly if her strongest argument is to slander an individual based on who he is related to. Sardanad faces Padrick and adds, Captain Padrick, Internal Security has a long-standing policy of investigating facts before deciding guilt. You may wish to try it sometime. My apologies, General. She made it sound as if she had much more on this young man. She had me convinced he was a hazard. I know now to check her facts. Voss takes the stunned Patrick by the elbow and leads her from the room. The two military men watch them leave, maintaining silence until the hatch closes behind them. So he really can do it? Sardanad's voice has a skeptical tone to it. Law has demonstrated his own skill with Aether. If he says it was real, I will bet it is. Okay, I will assemble a team. Once we determine the requirements, I will let you know how big a task it will be. Are you forgetting something? Blankenship smiles at his old friend and puts out his hand. Sardanat slaps a couple of bills in it with a grunt and a rueful smile. How did you know he could do it? As you know, I'm passable with runes and a fair astrophysicist, but my real talent has always been with people. Something about him feels unusual. Haven't you felt it? At Sardanet's nod, he continues. So I went digging for information on his birth ship. The records were hidden, but they were there. You should look up his birthday. The two head out for the next appointment. Thank you for joining me for Chapter 9 of The Problem with Aether. Next time, Sebastian's remarkable display begins opening doors he never expected. New opportunities, new challenges, and new dangers await as powerful people continue asking a simple question: who exactly is Sebastian Snow? Until then, this is Mr. Jim. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on our next adventure.